Hello and welcome to another episode of Quarantine with Fulbrighters, where we bring you the best and the brightest minds from all over the country to talk about the brilliant work that they're doing. So Aatir is here with us, who has a Fulbright Master's from the University of Pennsylvania, and he's working with this cool company called vFairs. So first of all, Aatir, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this.
No, thank you so much for coming on. You're so used to building online spaces that you're in a mall right now as well. It's all
Yeah,
about
this is
community.
this is all marketing right now. I thought that I'd use this opportunity, but yeah, I am very used to being virtual everywhere now.
So what is vFairs?
So vFairs is a virtual events platform, and what we enable is organizations to take their events online, whether they're doing a conference, a trade show, a job fair, an open day. Typically or traditionally, it's been done in a physical setting, but we're trying to digitize that experience so that organizations can then, maximize their reach. They can reach out to anyone in the world. And then also somehow cut their costs as well, because obviously physical venue rentals, etc., become very expensive. And then really get a sense of measuring how their events are doing, because it's so digital. You can track literally everything. So we're empowering organizations to get closer to their audiences and give them some really amazing digital experiences that let them influence, excite, delight their customers, their leads, their prospects for a variety of use cases. So yeah, that's what, and obviously with the pandemic, all as sad as that is, vFairs and virtual events sort of as an industry sort of grew up, and now it's sort of mainstream and it's becoming the part and parcel for every corporate engine. And that's where vFairs sort of helps out.
So this news that we see now about events happening in Metaverse, an Indian couple got married in the Metaverse as well. Is that what you're working towards, or is it still more like Zoom or Skype?
Well, I hope so. Like eventually we'll get to that. So Metaverse is a good conversation that we're currently having, and we're seeing whether we can explore into that. At this point, so it's a bit more than just a webinar and more than Zoom. So obviously with an event, you have, when it comes to a webinar, there's just an interaction between a speaker and a group of audiences. But with a virtual event, you can do much more than that. So let's say if you have a job fair, so not only can you interact or listen to employers talking about their brand, but you can also talk to recruiters in a chat room. You can have direct messaging and networking outside of that. You can also apply on a live job board to applications. You can, within the event, have shortlisting and screening interviews. You can have a photo booth contest. You can have a scavenger hunt. You can, also look at different collateral that employers have shared, download those brochures and flyers, access videos, so on and so forth. So it's actually a bigger skeleton, bigger, sort of a vehicle on which the entire platform runs, and it's more than just a webinar. But eventually, the where we're going is, we're just enabling organizations to connect with their audience in these novel ways, and sort of just give them different ways of capturing value. And eventually, who knows, we might actually go to a point where we're getting into the metaverse space and whatnot. By the way, virtual wedding fairs is not a very unknown concept. In fact, we've been approached to actually power a couple of those. So virtual marriage halls and whatnot, and virtual housewarming parties. That's an interesting use case as well. In fact, last year we also did something called virtual university graduation fairs, because people were unable to attend their graduation and commencement ceremonies. So that's the power of virtual, I guess.
Graduations, weddings, job fairs,
Absolutely.
all without needing to wear pants. I think that should be the tagline.
We're making the world lazy. That should be our tagline.
So since you've already mentioned metaverse, what are your thoughts about the metaverse? Because it seems like a dystopian reality, but it seems closer than we thought it was.
Yeah, well, with the way technology is coming about, and I think the fact that Meta, previously known as Facebook, has thrown their towel into this ring and really made it real. Obviously, and a number of other companies like Samsung and Walmart are also doing it. It is definitely something that's the next frontier in technology. I think metaverse, when I've been interviewing people on that as well, and everybody has a different definition of what that eventually will come out to be. But I think it just is a parallel universe to what we have in our physical setting, which allows you to, again, afford a different reach and create digital experiences that you physically could not experience. So for example, if I have a cousin in Canada and I have another cousin in Turkey and a few friends in Malaysia, it would be, one way would be to just sit on Netflix and watch it at the same time, watch a particular movie at the same time. But another one would be to actually get into a virtual setting with their own avatars and really interact in a more intimate manner while you're watching something, and have much more gestures, many more objects in that virtual setting uh, to really solidify that. And those are memories that will be completely different from what the physical memories are. So we're trying to graduate away from interfaces, which we're trying to make the most of these interactions with the computer, and actually try to create a mimic alternative reality where we'll have these experiences. So a Netflix watch party is just one example. Shopping, banking, just leisure, all of these will be enabled with metaverse, and will probably become a part of our lives, just like how the mobile phone became a very integral part of our lives back about 10 years ago.
I feel like an old uncle screaming at the moon, looking at the metaverse, because I'm honestly very scared of these ideas of virtual Netflix watch parties or virtual Netflix and chill parties. I don't know how the avatars will interact. But if we come back to vFair, I'm a stand-up comedian. What's the sell? If I come to you and be like, if we do a stand-up comedy show on vFair, what's the sell of the platform? Because I'm really skeptical of the virtual world ever replicating that real life experience.
Yeah, sure. So interestingly, we've done some entertainment shows on vFairs as well, and we've brought in comic magician acts, and we've even done some comedy acts, etc. I think when you're doing it on a webinar, it affords you a very different type of vibe. The number one sell that we're going to give you as a comedian is the reach, right? So right now, if you're doing it something physically,
exposure. So basically,
yeah, exposure is just going to be
every
amazing, right?
So favorite word.
Yeah, exposure is going to be through the roof, right? Right now, only people in Pakistan are looking at you. We can actually expose you to the entire world. People from Australia all the way to Singapore to Brazil are going to tune in, and then they can really understand. Plus, all of this gets recorded. This can be used in on-demand viewing as well. But another sell, which is also very applicable to the entertainment world, is that you may also be doing this physically. So let's say you're at a comedy club and you're doing your own thing, and you're charging those people tickets, right? But why not just have another virtual event where you're streaming this live and charging a separate ticket price for actually just engaging and creating that access to your content? And not only that, you're also creating digital communities out of it. So right now we perceive that there's an audience and that they are looking and consuming you. But what if that audience could actually band together and talk about you as a brand, right? In the physical setting, it's less there, but when you're doing it virtually, they're talking about, they're sharing their best clips of Shehzad, and they're talking about Shehzad could do this or that. All of that happens in a digital setting, and that becomes a community that can live on for far longer because you have their email address, because you have a place for them to convene, which is much easier than taking a flight and coming to Lahore. So
it's more likely that somebody will say, I can't believe Shehzad said this, and then Will Smith will come and slap me.
Imagine a meme creator, which is just real time, right? As soon as Shehzad says something which is off the chain, then a meme is created out of that.
This is a
I hope you don't get slapped though. that was the con part of technology, which always is there. But yeah, let's just focus on exposure.
So do you conceive of vFairs more as a social media platform rather than a video conferencing app?
No, actually, social media is just only one use case. In fact, I think it's a business enablement platform. So, for example, when I look at job fairs, recruiters now are very much open to hiring from all over the world, right? So previously it was just going to LUMS and going to IBA and trying to recruit from there. When you're doing virtual, you're actually hiring people from Portugal. So you're actually checking off a business KPI, which is hiring. Similarly, you can even promote your products and services. You can even have donation charity drives online, and really amplify the capture of acquisition of funds, right? And some people use it for marketing, some people use it for sales, other people are actually monetizing it through, making it as a conference. So GITEX, like that happens in Dubai, or Expo happened in Dubai. If you have a virtual component, you can even monetize it through putting sponsors over there and giving them exposure. So I think it's business enablement in general. Social media is definitely one part of it, and entertainment and all that is definitely enabled to virtual event platform. And that's the beauty of it, because it's so generic that it can pretty much affect every walk of life you can imagine.
So if we go back in time, when the pandemic hit, were you and the CEO already talking about it, thinking about it, and the pandemic accelerated it? Or did the pandemic hit and then the dollar signs flashed before your eyes?
I like how you frame that. So we started talking about the technology back in 2011, before this was all cool as well. We were trying to actually get into the physical job fair market, but we decided against it because we were technologists at heart, and we thought that, what, it's better that, we basically create a digital technology which enables all of that. And that's when, things started off, and we started, with a very small project, and we sold it to a couple of government organizations in the Middle East. We were, this particular product is actually part of a larger company called Baith.com, which is the job site in the Middle East. And then, like year on year, we kept on improving the product. We launched different use cases, from virtual conferences to trade shows to job fairs to entertainment nights and whatnot. And eventually, yes, it was growing at a very linear path. But then when the pandemic hit, it just blew out of the roof, right? Then the demand just was insane. And when that happened, obviously, we rolled this off as a separate subsidiary. We incorporated it. We have our own individual presence now, separate from the parent company. And we became very serious about it. So we went from 25 to 30 people to now 275 all over the world, literally in the space of 2 years. So yes, you are right. The pandemic catalyzed the trend.
I mean, the pandemic is impossible to predict unless you're talking to Bill Gates as well. But if we're talking to entrepreneurs who are listening, when they're thinking of their company or they're thinking of an idea, how much should they think about where the world will be in 10 years? So since you said you thought of this in 2011, and maybe 10 years down the line, it really, the use case scenario was there. Do companies need to think like that what we're creating now, how much will it be used 10 years down the line?
Yeah, really depends on your ambition, to be honest. Like sometimes people are there to make a quick buck, and they just want to, flip a little, business and then make a quick earning through it and then just sell it off. Some people actually start with the whole idea that we want to get acquired. In that case, you have a much shorter term mindset, and then you're going to probably plan for that. Like real estate, not even tech products, like real estate is probably sometimes that, right? You just want a very good plot, you purchase it, you invest in it, and then you're trying to flip it in the next 2 to 3 years to make a profit so that you can keep on going. But then sometimes your vision is much broader than that. Sometimes you want to make a dent in the universe. And that's when you think that, look, I want to create an institution that will really empower people in a very real way. At that time, it's very important to look at trends and what's coming up right now, because obviously technology takes some time to catch up before it becomes, applicable to the larger majority. So in that respect, yes, it's important that you look at, what things are coming up, what things are becoming obsolete. A good example would be Tesla, right? So there was a time when we were thinking about, let's talk about cars and let's make a car website and really invest in making the automobile community and whatnot. But at that very time, there was this whole notion of electrical vehicles. And then there was also this notion of autonomous vehicles. So understanding that may be a thing of the future and that will be a reality in 10, 15 years. That could be your competitive differentiation at this point, because nobody's focusing on it. Another example of this is Metaverse, Web3, NFTs. These have been gaining a lot of traction recently. People who are doing it right now, or actually were doing it 5 years before, since they had planned it, now they're reaping the benefits. So 100% more foresight and more planning you have, the better you'll catch those dividends.
I guess that's always the fear with technology, right? I had a friend who looked at Google Glass and was convinced that's the future. So when we look at NFTs, we see the millions there, but is it here to stay? That's the question.
That's a bet that you'll have to take as an entrepreneur, to be honest. if anybody knew the definite answer to that, then we'd all be millionaires. So risks are part of the game.
So you said you're a technologist at heart. Can we just talk about your journey as well? How did you go from Pakistan to being now, handling a company with 270 people?
Yeah, sure. So, like I graduated from LUMS in 2006, and I had a computer science degree at that time. And then I joined a software development firm called Techlogics in Lahore, and that was my first stint as coding and programming and really developing real business websites. At that time, I was working on an airline consolidator, which was a ticket reservation system. It gave me a very good sense of how technology really works and how the components come together to build something of value. And then obviously very grateful and very lucky to get the Fulbright scholarship and went to University of Pennsylvania in 2007. And there I did my master's in computer information sciences, got a better sense of things like infrastructure, security, and even took courses on engineering entrepreneurship as well to understand like, okay, how does the business model sort of fit into that? And armed with that knowledge, I also, while I was at the Fulbright, managed to get an internship at Microsoft in Redmond. I did 3 months over there, worked at Office Business Applications. Again, got a very different perspective on how things work and how the brilliant minds of the world really operate at that level. And then once I had, that technology aspect, I knew that I want to fuse this with real value that I want to give to the consumer. So I took that technical knowledge and wanted to find a discipline which allows me to creatively express that, hey, how can I really give value as opposed to just push code? All due respect, I'm not saying that pushing code is bad. It's just that it was not my interest at that time, that I just be limited to developing code. So when I came back to Pakistan, that's when I landed this gig at Parkwheels, and that was a really amazing opportunity where I was able to fuse my love for technology and how that enables various business value items, and then marry it with a website which was and a thriving community at that time. So that was my little introduction into the tech space. And then from there, went on to work at recruitment platforms and Bait.com in Dubai, and then worked on software as a service platforms. Then finally got the vFairs gig as well. So that was a little bit of my journey. But I've been all over the place, right? So started off from Pakistan, went to the States, came back to Pakistan, worked a couple of years, then went back to Dubai for about 6-7 years. Came back to Pakistan again to really work on vFairs, scale it up, and now I'm in Canada. So I keep on bouncing geographies.
Even with Parkwheels, it's so interesting that the community existed and the website existed for years, but in recent times, it's really blown up. Either the interest is there now or the technology has caught up, but Parkwheels was in a great place to make use of that when that happened.
True, absolutely. I think the magic of Parkwheels is really in the community more than anything else. I think from a technology perspective, at some certain levels, like even when I was a product manager, I used to look at competitors. There were certain competitors which were, from a tech stack perspective, they were better. Like, I would be the first one to accept that. But our community was so strong that it basically was the driving force behind its success, and that was the real magic formula. A lot of people ask, like, was it this feature or that feature? It was not really features. It was just really power users believing in the brand, and I think that still stands the test of time. To be honest, any product that you have, if you have a very passionate community behind it, even if the product has a certain level of flaws, it will still succeed. A good example of that is Craigslist, which is one of the biggest examples of in network effects, where even though like a lot of other technological innovations came along, Craigslist, because it had so much community involved in that, still was moving on strong. So I think that's a good example of how important it is for you to have a very core community. That's the magic formula of Apple, magic formula for any of these new innovative ventures. And so focusing on the person and the emotion behind it always has its benefits.
I mean, Reddit is also a great example. I would assume the technology
Absolutely.
is not phenomenal. It just seems like blocks of text. And even with Craigslist, there has to be a brand loyalty, because there are a few people who just die off Craigslist every single year, and people continue using Craigslist.
Yeah. So technology is probably a bit more complex than we sort of assume it is. I'm pretty sure because of the scale that they have. Craigslist and Reddit are extremely voluminous and very high traffic websites. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of tech complexity. But yes, like what we see as consumers, it seems just like blocks of text, and it's just an ad. It's just a very simple piece of images and text mashed up together. But I think the driving force again remains the belief in the brand and the people that are behind it.
So you already had a degree in computer science from LUMS, and people would assume that's quite a prestigious degree. And there's everything, and some people might even assume that everything that you need to know, you learn from that bachelor's. But then you also mentioned how the master's exposed you to the entrepreneurial side, to the business side of things. How would you say a Fulbright master's differentiates, or if you do a Fulbright master's, it differentiates you from people who maybe just have a bachelor's?
Oh, Fulbright master! I think it's the value of that master's was just phenomenal. And the reason behind that is, first of all, like diversity of thought and the exposure to a lot more diverse experiences of people. That just really sets the bar very, very high when it comes to that kind of an experience. So when I went to the Fulbright, I was working alongside group mates and interacting with colleagues which were coming from all parts of the world, and they were bringing thoughts that I was never exposed to. I had no idea that that kind of technology, that kind of thinking, that those kind of problems, those kind of challenges existed in the world. The second thing is that the instructors and the faculty that I was exposed to were phenomenal. Some of them had done so much in the real industry that we only rave about, right? The Yahoos and the Microsofts and the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. And learning from them directly was just an honor, and really was just this opportunity that was too hard to pass on. So that is there. But I think even from a personal perspective, like being going on a Fulbright master's, really experiencing the city that you were living in. I was in Philadelphia. I also managed to pull off this really massive road trip all across the United States while I was in my Fulbright. I did about 7,200 miles coast to coast, visited about 24 cities in I don't know, a month or so. And that just gave me perspective just by traveling, like what kind of different thought ecosystems are there, what are the challenges of each and every community, what weather looks like in other parts of the world, and what innovative systems they've got to solve problems of their communities. And that was just very endearing. And just that microcosm of 2 years at the Fulbright Masters was a lifetime of learning for me. So I think I'd advise everyone to actually try to pursue it.
You're making me want to go on a Fulbright again. I never ended up doing a road trip quite as large. I did get on the Amtrak a lot, and I did visit a lot of cities, but I'm all of a sudden I'm feeling FOMO and regret of not doing a road trip. It's so interesting that any guest that I ask this question, inevitably they're talking about the Fulbright experience, the things that they remember. It's the road trips, it's the friends, it's the communities, it's so much that you learn outside of the classroom. What are some of the things that the Fulbright experience taught you that you still use in your work or life?
I think there like the first thing is that how to interact with other people and be an active listener, because I think when you're coming in and you're working with very an eclectic bunch of people with different backgrounds, you need to sort of understand their perspective, because they're inevitably going to be different from what you have as your own understanding of and life. As a product manager, that's one of the things that I'm doing on a daily basis. I'm trying to understand and synthesize different perspectives and come up with an outcome on that. I think it also makes you a lot more independent in your decisions and a lot more accountable as well, to just basically feel the weight of what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. I think the Fulbright also taught me to be a risk taker and more ambitious in my thoughts and think bigger, just generally think bigger than trying to focus on something that's that probably isn't too consequential, or it's not going to give you that same impact. Because one thing that Fulbright, and when you talk to these people when you're on the scholarship, everybody has these dreams, and you sort of understand that that the impact that they can have is very much possible if you put the right amount of hard work in it and right amount of exposure. So I think a lot of the soft skills were developed by Fulbright, which I still use at my work. Obviously, the Fulbright badge itself is a great community connector. So I meet other Fulbrighters, then we have something in common. It's an icebreaker in conversations as well. But it also exposes you to, again, geographies and cities, and you have a lot more to talk about, because then you can talk about, you bump into other people who are from Philadelphia or have seen that town before, and you can relate to them in a deeper level. So there's a lot to get from the Fulbright experience.
Absolutely. I'm always in awe talking to Fulbrighters and all the brilliant work that they're doing around the world. So it's true, tech people are eclectic. So the shows like Silicon Valley are not lying.
Yes, absolutely. Like we are a bunch of different people. It's like M&Ms, where we come in all sizes and colors, and we just mesh together. But we, at the end of the day, we have the same effect, that we either delight, influence, excite, and that's what technocrats are all about.
If you can put your Gary V cap on for a minute or two, as a product manager who has to manage such differing personalities, what's the secret sauce? Just let them
I think, I think it's let them be heard. I think let them be is one thing, but let them be heard, that you understand what their perspectives are, and you respect them. And once you have that kind of sort of an approach to managing so many different people, then that mutual respect is established, and then ideas are not lost. That's the great thing, because then ideas are preserved, because you're just becoming stronger. And that's why I think a lot of people talk about culture fit, when they're hiring and whatnot. I feel actually you need to hire for culture add, because if you're trying to hire the same kind of people that you are relate with at this point, then you're not really going to break the barriers and be more than what you are currently. So I think be a bit more experimental. Diverse perspectives are always welcome. That actually makes for a better thought process, I guess.
So for all our listeners out there who might be interested in their own ideas or mulling over it, how do you see the future of technology? What are some of the fields that you feel like there will be a lot of interest in? And for people who might be scared of taking that jump, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so I think from a technology perspective, I think we already touched upon it, but a lot of these new things when it comes to the Web3, Metaverse, IoT, virtual reality, augmented reality, AI, all of this is going to take probably a different shape and form in the next coming years. I think in the past 3 to 4 to 5 years, a lot of this was in experimental phase, and people were trying to test the waters of what is the best way to use them. But now I think there is much more, they're trying to, companies around the world are trying to mesh these technologies together to come up with a much more holistic experience. So I think that's where, and then of course, then, there are many other things that are happening, like Tesla is making vehicles completely in a different manner. Sustainability will be a very important concern for a lot of people out there, and sustainable materials and development and smarter cities. These are all things that will start gaining traction as well. Dare I say it, virtual events, a shameless plug. I'll put that in. That will be the future as well, and something, maybe hybrid events for that matter, where we're mixing physical and virtual experiences together. As far as people who are afraid of getting in, I think inaction really kills creativity. I think it's less about you trying to overthink the any endeavor. You want to, of course, put your best foot forward. It doesn't mean that you have to be reckless with your decisions. Obviously, you have to plan, and you have to make sure that you do your due diligence. But having said that, there will always be that leap of faith that you'll have to take. Nobody can ever put on a platter that, hey, this is going to work 100%. That risk, it will always be there. Now, the question is that, do you want to take that risk and then reap the rewards later on, or do you want to let everybody else go past you and you can take a backseat? Some people actually choose the latter because they feel that that's what they want to do. That may not be a wrong thing, but at the same time, people who want to really, make a difference, especially if you've done a Fulbright and you want to use that knowledge to serve the country, you need to know that risk will be a part of everything. You want to reduce it through due diligence, but then don't over analyze or don't go into analysis paralysis. Just take that leap of faith, and you'll probably do things that you weren't even aware were capable of. And that's what we're currently seeing. If you look at all the startups that have sprung up in the past year or so, and all of these major improvements in all these spheres, from delivery to logistics to transportation, from the Careens and the Ubers of the world and the Food Pandas of the world, and now we've got these Cheetah and 10-minute delivery and whatnot. All of this would not have been possible if somebody didn't sit down and say, you know what, I want to try it out. So do you want to be a pioneer, or do you want to be just someone who's forgotten in life? That's your choice.
Brilliant. I'm feeling personally inspired after listening to that. Thank you so much, Aatir. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shadad. Really appreciate it.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.